Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Demystifying Meals for Type 2 Diabetes. I'm Kirby Bransafort, a registered dietitian and Wegmans nutritionist, and I will be moderating today's webinar. Please note that the information provided today is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute or replacement for medical advice, medical nutrition therapy, or individualized nutrition counseling. I will be rejoining you at the end to moderate our Q&A and am now pleased to introduce your presenter and my dear friend, Marta Human, registered dietitian and Pennsylvania, Delaware Division nutritionist. Take it away, Marta.
Thank you, Kirby. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's really nice to be here. I'm glad you all are joining us today. I am going to share some diabetes basics with you today, as well as tips for building meals and balancing your plate with nutritious and super delicious options for type 2 diabetes. And while it might simplify messaging, if I could tell you today that there's an eating plan that's this one size fits all for diabetes, there just isn't. Because there's a broad spectrum of you, and you're affected by diabetes and pre-diabetes, and there's personal preferences and co-occurring conditions. However, I am going to do my best to give you some examples that could work for you, okay? So let's get started. First off, though, I wanted to give you share with you some resources. If you don't already know about them, the most important one on this page, really, or the most comprehensive, I should say, not the most important, but comprehensive, is the American Diabetes Association. That's this one in the middle here. If you're not familiar with them, they just give a ton of information. It's really great. But one of the things they really emphasize is meeting with a dietitian who specializes in diabetes education and then have frequent follow-up with that person. A dietitian specialist is going to have this credential here, this CDCES. That stands for Certified Diabetes Care and Education Specialist. And they can really help you create an eating plan that is specifically right for you. The best way to find someone with those credentials is to ask your healthcare provider, the one that's treating your diabetes, or you could also ask your health insurance provider. Also, the CDCES has a locator tab where you can type in your address and they'll tell you all the ones with credentials that live near you. And of course, here at Wegmans, we have an entire section on our website that's devoted to living with diabetes. And much of what I'm going to talk about today can be found on our website. So you definitely want to check that out. So what is type 2 diabetes? Well, it's a chronic condition. It affects how your body turns food into energy. In type 2 diabetes, either your cells become resistant to the effects of insulin, and insulin is simply a hormone. It helps sugar get into your cells. It kind of opens the door of the cell to let the sugar in. Or it could be both, that your pancreas doesn't make enough insulin. Either way, it means that this sugar is building up in your blood instead of getting into your cells and being used for energy. And if you have diabetes, you might have noticed this tiredness before you were diagnosed and getting treatment. And that's why, because the energy wasn't getting into your cells. What are the complications of type 2 diabetes? Well, suppose your blood sugars are not kept within the range that your healthcare provider has set for you. In that case, that excess sugar that's floating around in your blood that we just talked about, that's causing damage to your blood vessels and tissues throughout your whole body. And this can lead to serious complications like the ones you see here: heart disease and stroke, kidney disease, nerve damage, vision problems. And it's kind of sneaky. It happens quite gradually. So it's really difficult to notice. And that's why it's so important to keep your blood sugar in control as much as you can. Now, managing type 2 diabetes, it requires a lifelong commitment, okay? Some key things you can do to manage your diabetes include this healthy pattern of eating. You want to stick to whole foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins. You want to limit ultra-processed foods like these. Ultra-processed foods, by the way, they're foods that typically go through multiple processes, and there's many added ingredients with them. You want to limit those, plus limit sugary drinks and saturated fats as well. And I'm going to get more in depth about those things in a few slides from now. Also important is to exercise regularly. We recommend at least 30 minutes of moderate intensity exercise most days of the week. That's because exercise really helps lower your blood sugar and it boosts your body's sensitivity to insulin. And then finally over here, we want you to monitor your blood sugar regularly. That's going to help keep you on track and make sure your treatment plan is working. And it's also important to take your medications as prescribed, even if you're feeling well, okay? Now, before we get into the strategies for eating with type 2 diabetes, I wanted to talk to you a bit about the macronutrients, carbohydrates, fat, and protein, so that we know which foods fit into which groups. And I'm going to start with carbohydrates. That's the one when you have diabetes you're most concerned about. I'm sure that you've heard that carbs are to be avoided if you have diabetes. There is some truth to managing carbohydrate intake, but avoiding them is not the answer to better health. So let's get that cleared up. Carbs are our main source of energy, and they are our brain's preferred source of energy. We definitely need carbohydrates. There's 3 types of carbs. You'll see there: sugars, starches, and dietary fiber. Sugars and starches, they're broken down in our digestive tracts. They help give us energy. Fiber, on the other hand, isn't fully digested, although it's still important because it plays an important role in digestive health and in your heart health. And it's especially important for people with diabetes because it helps to prevent blood sugar spikes when you eat. You try to consume a minimum of 14 grams per 1,000 calories. As an example, if you have a 2,000 calorie diet roughly, you would just double the 14 to make it 28 grams. You could also go with a range between 25 and 35 or 40 grams of fiber each day. Now, let me clarify the difference between natural sugars and added sugars because that's very confusing for folks. So natural sugars are found in foods like fruits and dairy products. They're also found in smaller amounts in like vegetables and whole grains. Foods with natural sugars, they're part of a healthy diet. We want to eat those. They can provide our bodies with important vitamins and minerals and plant compounds and that important fiber. Added sugars, on the other hand, they're not naturally present in foods. They are added. And they're added usually to processed foods and drinks, of course, to make them sweeter. Now, the main focus for all of us should be on nutrient-rich sources of natural sugars like whole grain breads, fruits, whole grain pastas, vegetables. Those are going to give us all those plants are going to give us the needed fiber that's good for us. And then of course low-fat dairy has nutrients and some natural sugar in there as well. And then you want to avoid or limit, I shouldn't say avoid, but you want to limit added sugars like in sugar-sweetened beverages and desserts because many of them contain very few, if any, nutrients. And please, I'm not saying that we should never eat a sweet treat. Goodness, that would not be fun at all. It's just that we should really be careful in our portion sizing and timing of when we eat those foods and then be aware of our blood sugar levels when we eat them. Next up, we have fat. Like carbohydrates, fat also gets a bad rap, but it does play an essential role in health. It's needed for several things, including keeping your skin healthy. It supports your brain health. It's really good for our immune system, and it helps with nutrient absorption. Vitamins and some plant compounds require some fat to be absorbed. And there's 3 types of fat. There's saturated fats, trans fats, and unsaturated fats. When it comes to diabetes, the most important one to keep an eye on is the saturated fat. That's the kind found in animals, like the marbling in beef, the fat around the chicken breast, the fat in sausages and bacon, full-fat dairy, butter, coconut oil. Those all have the saturated fat in them. And that's harmful because research has shown it can raise our LDL. That's our lousy cholesterol. And that increases our heart disease risk. So when you have diabetes, you're already in the higher risk category. So you really want to be careful with the saturated fat. Now, trans fats, they're also a type to be avoided. However, they're banned from our food products right now, so they're less of a worry today than they once were. Now, unsaturated fats, they may help lower our LDL or lousy cholesterol. So this is a good thing. Any liquid oil, nuts, seeds, fish, even avocados are good sources of unsaturated fats. And something that you could do as well is substitute unsaturated fats for saturated fats. For example, use olive oil instead of butter. You could eat fish more often than you eat red meat. Those are just a couple of examples that could help you cut down on the amount of saturated fats in your diet. And then next up we have protein. We all know protein helps build muscles and maintain muscles as well for that matter. But protein is needed to build and maintain all of the body cells, tissues, and organs. So it's really important. It's also used for tissue repair and even important for our immune system. Now, protein also helps you feel full and satisfied after a meal, which may help us eat less overall, which is helpful if you're, trying to manage your weight. Now, foods that provide protein, like this meat and poultry, fish, seafood, eggs, dairy, even plants like tofu, beans and legumes, and even actually some fruits and vegetables have a little bit of protein in them. So those are your sources for those. But for people with diabetes, protein and healthy fats are important not only because of their nutrients, all of these things that we talked about, they're super important for, but it's also helpful to pair a carbohydrate food with proteins and healthy fats to avoid blood sugar spikes. And I'm going to talk more specific meal ideas in a second. Next up, I want to talk about the Nutrition Facts Panel because it's important that we all understand how to read that thing. So Nutrition Facts Panel, the most important thing to look at on the Nutrition Facts Panel for all of us, for people that have or don't have diabetes, is the serving size. That is because all of the numbers underneath refer to the serving size. So if you're eating more or less than 2/3 cups in this example, you have to adjust those numbers to fit that serving size, okay? First up on this Nutrition Facts Panel is the amount of total fat. This is where you're going to find the saturated fat and the trans fat. Remember, those are the ones we want to be careful with, saturated fat especially. For people with diabetes, we want to keep no more than 7% of your calories coming from saturated fat. So we want to always look at that and make sure it's the lowest we can, I like to use the label to compare products. If you're comparing difference, you can look at these numbers. Sodium, that does not affect our blood sugar. That's salt, of course. But it does affect or could affect your blood pressure. So we really should try to get no more than 2,300 milligrams of sodium per day in our diet. Or if your doctor sets you with a different goal, you should try to stick to that because you're already at a higher risk for heart disease. So we want to keep that to a minimum. Next up is the total carbohydrate section. This is the total carbs right here. And underneath it is the dietary fiber. Remember, we said that was important for keeping your blood sugar stable. And then we have the total sugars. This should say total natural sugars because that's what they mean by total sugars. And then it also includes the amount of added sugars. And remember, that's the one we want to keep to a minimum. So these are some things to look at on the Nutrition Facts Panel. Now, to the fun part. How are we going to build meals for type 2 diabetes? Well, we're going to start first by emphasizing the non-starchy vegetables. We're going to minimize the added sugars and refined grains. We're going to choose whole foods over highly processed foods. And we're also going to determine the amount and timing of foods, especially that contain carbohydrates. And that is because the total grams of carbs you have, the total amount you eat at any occasion, that's going to impact your blood sugar. So knowing how many grams of carbs you need is really highly individual. So I can't give you that number today. This is something what the credentialed dietitian educator we were talking about before, that person can really help you with that. It's another reason to make an appointment with one. Okay. So where do we start with meal planning? We really like to use this visual method of a plate at Wegmans, and we're going to show you some ways to fill your plate. And you'll notice that it's divided into 3 sections. You have this big section here with the non-starchy veggies, the broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, that sort of veggies. And starchy veggies I'm going to get to on the other side here, so stay tuned. Protein foods, chicken, meats, fish, plant proteins like beans and legumes, soy products, tofu, that sort of thing. And then the bottom are the grains or starchy vegetables. That is brown rice, wheat pasta, quinoa, those sorts. And those starchy vegetables are corn, peas, legumes, beans. Those go down here in the grains and starchy veg section. And then you can also add a milk, fruit, or yogurt, and that's going to be berries, apples, grapes, citrus, low-fat milk, and plain yogurt. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that I'm going to be talking a lot and saying the word plate a lot, but it can be any vessel. It could be a bowl, it could be a board, inside a corn husk, inside a banana leaf, inside a taco. The point is to really try as often as possible to fill at least half of the vessel that you're consuming your food on with non-starchy vegetables. So here is a basic framework of how to put meals together with actual products. So let's go through this. We want to start with the non-starchy veggies. That's the biggest portion of your plate, so let's start there. They could be pre-cooked, pre-prepared. They could be from a can. They could be frozen. They could be from the fresh section of the supermarket of Wegmans. So we don't care what form they come in. We just want half of your plate to be filled with non-starchy vegetables, preferably ones that don't have a lot of sauces and that sort of thing on them. And then the protein foods, you could do a ready-to-cook salmon like here. You could do an already prepared chicken that you could either warm up or slice up, put cold on a salad. You could get a meat to grill or bake. And you could use a plant protein as well, as tofu makes a good option for the protein portion of your plate. And then over on the grain starchy veggie side, long grain brown rice, say that 3 times fast. This is found in our frozen section. Really easy to work with. Stick it in the microwave. It's ready in seconds instead of the 50 minutes that it would take you to cook brown rice from scratch. You could also cook up some scratch grain like quinoa. These multi-grain rolls are really nice to keep. They're handy. They're frozen, so you can pull out 1 or 2 at a time, however many you need for your meal. And they thaw out so quickly that they're nice to keep handy. And then of course starchy veggies like this corn here, could be peas, could be potatoes. That sort of thing could also go in that grain section of your plate. Now, this combination of non-starchy veg, protein, and whole grain, that's going to help keep your blood sugar stable, okay? The whole point of this is when you combine foods like this, it's going to keep your blood sugar more like this instead of doing this business. This business we don't want. This is what we want to have. And when you combine foods, that's how you can manage that. Okay, so now I want to show you some examples of plates, and these can also be found in our Living with Type 2 Diabetes brochure, which is on our website, and you can check that out. First up, I have some breakfast ideas, and I know breakfast can be a challenge because it's traditionally carb heavy. However, I really think if we can think outside the box, it can really help here. So let's talk about avocado toast. It's got a whole grain, it's got the egg to give you the protein, and it's got this beautiful avocado that has whole kinds of nutrients in it, plus fiber, plus healthy fats. Top it with these flavor bomb tomatoes, because tomatoes go so good with eggs and avocado. But you can put whatever vegetable you want, but then you have a nice balanced piece of toast. You could also do some eggs with spinach, carrots, and with whole grain toast and some cantaloupe. This is sauteed, obviously, but you could also use whatever vegetables that you have on hand or that you have left over from the night before would make a nice addition to your breakfast. And then finally, if you're in a really big hurry, how about some multi-grain waffles? Stick 2 of those in the toaster, pair it with some almond butter or whichever nut butter you prefer. You could put some strawberries or a different fruit. You could put veggies there on the side if you want to make a nice balanced plate. Next up, we have lunch. How about a Greek turkey burger that you can find in our meat department with a multi-grain bun? I like to stack lots of veggies on my burgers when I'm eating them. It helps me get more veg in. You could pair a vegetable on the side. In this case, these zucchini sticks. They're ready to go when you buy them. All you have to do is saute them or steam them however you like. You could bake them as well. Super quick to get on the table because they cook really quickly. But you could put whatever vegetable you want on the side to make that round out. We could do a cauliflower crust veggie pizza with an arugula salad. The arugula salad's missing from the pic, but just imagine. It's got some bunch of veggies on there. It's got cheese to make the protein. And it's got some chickpeas in the crust for the non-starchy veg. And then if you're feeling fancy, you could do a shrimp salad on a whole bunch of greens, throw what other vegetables you want in there with shrimp being your protein. And then again, there's those frozen multigrain rolls again that you can just pull out however many you need for your meal. And then finally, dinner here. Some quick ways to get some dinner on the table. Veggie spaghetti with beans and sauce. In this case, beans are a plant protein. Instead of the starch in this meal, they're the protein. And this is made with really easy zucchini noodles. You can also find in our veggie markets there. Really quickly. This meal would be on the table so quickly because it's just the veggie noodles, a can of beans, some tomatoes. You can put whatever veggies. I'd probably put spinach in there. And actually, to be honest, I'd probably put chicken or fish in there as well to make it a little more hearty. But if you want a vegetarian meal, this is awesome. And then, again, multigrain rolls to pair with it to give you your grain. And who doesn't like to come home to a cooked meal? Oh, I love it. This slow-cooked Mediterranean chicken stew is perfect. Lots of veggies in there, some chicken. You could pair that with some quinoa or whichever grain you prefer. And then how about some tacos? Fish tacos in this case. I like to make fish tacos when I have leftover fish because it's a nice way to use up the leftovers. But palette high with veggies. By the way, salsa counts as a veggie if you didn't know that. And then the whole grain, the corn tortilla is considered a whole grain. So you're wrapping up all those yummies into a whole grain corn tortilla. And then I want to finish here with balanced snacks. Now, you're noticing a whole bunch of fruit on this page right here. And I bet that you've heard once or twice or a lot of times that you're not supposed to eat fruit if you have diabetes. And there couldn't be anything further from the truth. Fruit is allowed when you have diabetes or pre-diabetes. The trick is to pair it, like we said when we're doing the meal combo, you want to pair it with a protein or healthy fat or a combination of those things to help keep that blood sugar stable. So fruit has fiber in it, so that's going to keep your blood sugar from spiking it. But then when you pair it with these, it's going to slow down your digestion to keep your blood sugar stable. So a peanut butter or nut butter, a cheese stick, a quarter cup of mixed nuts or whatever nuts you prefer, a plain Greek yogurt would also go nicely with fruit. Now, I'm not saying you should eat a fruit every snack. That's not what I mean. I just wanted to give you lots of examples so you could see. You could also do like a tuna salad with some saltines, makes a nice snack. You could do 2 rice cakes with some nut butter, also makes a wonderful snack. Okay. I really want you to also, on our visiting on our Living with Diabetes pages on our website, there's really lots of meal inspiration and recipe product ideas on there. So definitely go check those out. I think I've said that a lot. Definitely check them out. Definitely check out the website. Okay, key takeaways. Your diet should be the main focus. You want to choose whole foods. You want to balance your plates. You want to focus on natural sugars and limit added sugars. You want to get enough fiber. You want to take advantage of a skilled and credentialed dietitian. And by the way, I didn't say that a dietitian services are covered when you have a diagnosis of diabetes, so that will be paid for by your insurance company. And take a look at wegmans.com/livingwithdiabetes for more info. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to have Kirby come back on and we're going to see how many questions you have. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Marta. That was wonderful. I have to say, it's a good thing I ate before this because that just made me incredibly hungry with all of those wonderful options.
Yeah, exactly.
So I will say we had a very active Q&A, so I want to jump right in with some of our questions. So the first one I wanted to start off with is one we get a lot, and it is whether or not going 0 sugar is good for you.
Ooh, great question. Well, remember carbohydrates are necessary in a well-balanced diet. We covered that earlier. So yeah, we should limit the amount of added sugars that we eat, but foods with natural sugars and fiber are beneficial to our health, so we really should be eating those. When you have diabetes, it's the total amount of carbohydrates in a product that affects your blood sugar. So 0 sugar products, they won't contain added sugars, that's true, but they may still contain carbs from the natural sugars, and they could be high in carbs. So this is one of the reasons to go check that nutrition facts panel to look and see how many carbs are in there.
Great. Thank you. And I think they answered a couple of other questions that just came in, so that's great. And next question we have is, what kinds of vegetables and meat can I eat that will not cause me to become pre-diabetic?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I know we can read on social media or hear from our friends and family that certain foods can cause us to be pre-diabetic or even get diabetes, but that is just a myth. There are no foods that directly cause either of those, okay? The best thing to do is what I presented today. Fill half of your plate with non-starchy veggies, then some lean proteins, whole grain starchy veg on the other half. Get that exercise for 30 minutes most days. Really try to limit your added sugars and your saturated fats. And by the way, this plate method, it's great for all of us, not just for those of us who have diabetes. So the whole family can be involved in the plate method.
That's great. Thank you. Very reassuring too. And I'm going to, if you don't mind, jump in and answer a couple, because there's quite a few here that are coming in about specific fruits. And so I'm trying to kind of compile what I think the main issue is, or the main question. So many people asking about if there's specific fruit recommendations, asking about the sugar content of some of them, should they be avoided or limited? And I think what a lot of folks might be wondering about is that glycemic index that they might be hearing about when some fruits are higher in sugar. So what I would say to you folks is just what Marta just said, is really it's those total carbohydrates that we're looking at. There are some cases we know where when people are trying to really get a handle on managing or regulating their blood sugar, the provider you're working with, potentially a dietitian or another healthcare provider, might start to help you fine-tune based on your individual response to specific foods. So a blanket thing here is just to look at those carbohydrates, and if you and your healthcare provider notice that you're having trouble getting things managed, then they might start to fine-tune looking at that. But there's not one particular fruit or collection of fruits that everybody would need to avoid. So hopefully that helps those of you who are wondering about those things. So we do have at least time for one more question, which would be, what foods are low in carbohydrates and also don't raise your cholesterol?
Oh, great question. Research has told us that it's the saturated fat in food that can raise our cholesterol. So cutting back on that type of fat is the most important, like I talked about in the presentation. The good news is almost all plants, with very few exceptions, coconut oil, palm kernel oil, those have a lot of saturated fats, but pretty much every other plant contains very little, if any, saturated fats. So those would be good choices. And then other foods that are low in saturated fats, lean meats like fish, poultry, lean cuts of beef even. That's why we talk a lot about filling half your plate with non-starchy veggies and a quarter cup of plate. That's a lot of plants. Those foods don't contain many, if any, grams, so those would be good choices.
All right, and I do want to sneak one more in, because our very first question that we got was, I could tell the person was sitting there ready and to ask this of us, and I think it's one that's on many people's minds. This particular person was asking about managing diabetes and kidney disease, because it seemed that there were many foods that were allowed on one and not allowed on the other. So could you speak to folks who are really just trying to manage multiple health problems or conditions like high blood pressure, kidney disease, and things like that amidst all of this?
Yeah, for sure. It's another good question. And, we really can't answer that kind of question here in this forum. There's just too many other variables happening, and this is a great reason, and one of the many, to make an appointment with a credentialed diabetes dietitian. I wish that we could help you, but that's a one-on-one to find out the whole picture. They're going to be able to help you navigate all those co-occurring conditions. So that would be my suggestion.
And as a reminder, there's not a list of foods not to eat for type 2 diabetes, so that's the great thing, that it's more about the timing and amounts. So that hopefully is a reassuring thing for those of you who are managing multiple conditions. And so we are right at one. That went so fast and so many great questions. I hope we got to enough of them and we're able to answer some burning questions. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Marta, for such wonderful inspiration and information. And we wish you all the best and hope you have a wonderful day and feel your best. So bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.